Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We are using the occasion of Kansas State's victory at Arkansas in the NCAA College Baseball Tournament Regional last weekend as a jumping-off point to discuss the Wildcats, the Big 12, and NCAA with K-State beat writer Kellis Robinett. Kansas State visits Virginia in the Super Regionals this weekend, with the winner heading to Omaha for the College World Series. That would be a first for the Wildcats. Kellis breaks down the team that's found the perfect time to play its best baseball. We switch gears to football and discuss the preseason prospects of Kansas State and the Big 12. The Wildcats have joined Utah, Arizona, Kansas, and Oklahoma State as preseason favorites in the first year of the Big 12 without Oklahoma and Texas. And we discuss why a good finish in the conference could mean more than just a nice bowl game this season. The conversation then turns to the financial change in college sports. Athletes are getting paid like never before, and they're about to get more now that there will be revenue sharing in the NCAA. What does that mean for a school like Kansas State? Okay, let's get started talking college sports with Kellis Robinett. Kellis, one thing that I didn't expect to get in my email box today were odds on the NCAA baseball tournament Super Regional, listing Kansas State as a 50-1 favorite to be the College World Series winner. I just didn't expect to see that last week, but here we are. Kansas State still alive in the NCAA baseball tournament with hopes of reaching its first College World Series. How much fun would that be if the Wildcats got to Omaha next week?
It would be incredible, really. There's no overstating how big it would be. Kansas State has only been to 2 Super Regionals ever, only been to the NCAA tournament, I think, 5 times, never been to the promised land of Omaha. It's what Pete Hughes and everybody here has kind of dreamed about for years and years. And for it to even have a chance to happen is quite the development. We don't normally get fun stories like this on the Kansas State beat this late into the summer. I guess spring, it's not quite summer, but you know what I mean. Normally by now, all sports are shut down, but now all focus is on K-State baseball, and they're playing really well. I mean, they went down to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and beat some pretty good baseball teams down there, and now they're halfway to Omaha, and it's a heck of a story, and it'll be even better if it can continue.
They have to go through the University of Virginia in Charlottesville to get it done. The games are Friday and Saturday, and if necessary on Sunday. And, you said Kansas State has a chance. They have precisely, according to this odds maker, a 28.6% chance of getting to the College World Series. That means Virginia has a 71.4% chance of emerging. UVA is a College World Series championship program. They won the title back in 2015. It was actually one of the last College World Series that I covered for the Star. Let's talk about this team a little bit, Kellis, and how they got to where they are. You mentioned the 2013 team first. Just to go back for a little bit of history, they went to the Super Regional, won their first Super Regional game, as I recall, against, was it Oregon State? Is that who they played back then? And
Yep, they went to Corvallis.
To Corvallis, lost game 2, and then dropped a heartbreaker for the third game, lost 4-3, I remember, in the third game. They were 2 runs away, basically, from getting to the College World Series in 2013. So they, as we said, they go to UVA to make it happen. What is this team doing well now, and why should they go to Virginia with some confidence?
I think it might sound crazy, but I think the biggest reason to feel confident right now is this team is not the same build-up that 2013 team had. That 2013 team was probably the best team in school history. They won the Big 12, eclipsed 40 wins on the season, just a really well-put-together team. They hosted a regional. They went out to Corvallis with, true aspirations of getting to the College World Series. They expected to do it and fell just short. And I'm not trying to say that in a way that this team can't do that or whatever, but they only won 32 games in the regular season. Got in basically just because Pete Hughes went out and wisely scheduled some really, really big kingpins in the sport to beef up their non-conference schedule. Played Tennessee, played Clemson, played UConn, who's in a super regional now, played the Big 12, and really got into the NCAA tournament based on their RPI and strength of schedule. And then, as luck would have it, they peaked at the right time. They got red hot. Their bats came alive, and they just put on an absolute clinic in the Fayetteville regional against Arkansas, Louisiana Tech, and Southeast Missouri State. And now they go into the super regional. I mean, riding this momentum wave. They're not a team that's a finished product. They seem to be peaking at the right time. Baseball's kind of a tricky thing. Sometimes once you get hot, you can't always stay hot. But if this team can stay hot, then there's a lot of reasons to think that they can, win 2 more games here and move on. That to me is the real question about this super regional is can they continue swinging the bats they did in Arkansas and Virginia? If so, then we're going to see some shootouts. Virginia is not known for defense, but they put up a lot of runs. I was looking up their stats before this. They got 12 batters on the team who hit 300 or better. 6 of those hit 350 or better, and 2 hit 400 or better. They're not out here trying to win 1-0 games. They're going to win shootouts if that's the thing in baseball. And so if Kansas State can keep swinging the bats and match that, they got a good shot here. If not, then it might be over. But, I mean, hey, it's fun to be talking about this right now.
Heck yeah, it is. You mentioned their non-conference scheduling, and that was obviously a bit of a change for the Wildcats this year, and it was a product of their failure to get in the NCAA tournament with bubble teams each of the previous 2 years. Is that, or not? Maybe not the previous 2 years, but in recent years anyway. Is that a fair assessment? Is that why they went out and scheduled the way they did?
Absolutely. They were one of the last 4 teams left out last season, and they felt jilted. It's kind of funny that they got in this year. They won 32 games in the regular season, which is actually the fewest number of wins they've had in the past 3 years. So, you look and say, well, why is this team better than the last couple? Well, I mean, clearly they're just really well put together. You can tell, especially now that they're in the postseason, guys like Kalen Culpepper is just outstanding. Just a great baseball player, going to be a future pro. They've got some good arms. They've got some good defense. And they've got a manager who really knows how to manufacture runs when they do get guys on base. But, I mean, overall, the big picture of it, if you just look at the side-by-side, numbers, there's not really any great reason as to why this team was selected in the NCAA tournament. Last year's team was left out. The only true difference is that Pete Hughes, last year after Memorial Day, when he watched his team, walk away from the selection show heartbroken, said, I'm never going to let this happen again. Everybody told him, you didn't play hard of schedule. Your RPI is bad. We can't let you in the tournament. So he told me he called up 6 different teams. They were Tennessee, Clemson, UConn, Missouri State, which doesn't sound all that good, and Northeastern, that's 5. But anyways, he called all 5 and said, I will play all 5 of you on the road. Pick your time. We'll come do it. And they all said, all right, sounds great. Bring it on. Precisely the thought of we're going to make our schedule so hard that it's going to test us. And if we come anywhere near the level of wins we did last year, they're not going to keep us out. And, props to him because that philosophy worked. There was a method to his madness. And not only did it get them in, but I think you could say that it really prepared them for what they faced in Arkansas. Because after you go to Tennessee, after you go to Clemson, after you go to OU, Oklahoma State, Texas, wherever, they weren't fazed by 12,000 fans cheering against them, calling the Hogs, everything they do down there. They played one of their best games, and now they're moving on, and they're going to go into an even tougher environment probably in Virginia.
Yeah, look, Pete Hughes, he was tabbed as the successor to Brad Hill, who he was the manager of the team that took him to the super regional back in 2013. But interesting background for Pete Hughes. Longtime head coach, but not in this – well, I should say not in this area. Of course it was this area. He spent time at Oklahoma, but his background was from the East mostly, right? Boston College, Virginia Tech, and then it's 5 seasons at Oklahoma, sits out a year. I guess he gets released at Oklahoma, sits out a year. He's an assistant at Georgia, and that's where he gets hired from Kansas State. I don't know what you thought of the hire at the time. I thought it was an interesting one given, his background. But I guess you got to say it's to get this far in what would this be season 5 for him at K-State, 5 or 6? It's certainly paying off.
Yeah, so he started in 19, and definitely when he was hired, not met with a lot of enthusiasm. I mean, that's just kind of the way they do it around here. Chris Hyman, people didn't love the day he got in. Bruce Weber, people rioted when he showed up on campus. These are guys who went on to win a lot of games. Jerome Tang, they were happy with. Pete Hughes, when he showed up, the big thought was basically, well, this is just a guy who couldn't cut it at Oklahoma. So now, we're getting him on the way down, not the way up. Just a retread who's not, all that exciting. But I will say, as soon as we talked to him, as soon as they brought him in for his press conference, I mean, he really had some good ideas for Kansas State baseball and talked the talk from day one. He was talking about getting this group to Omaha, not just winning regionals, but winning super regionals. And his big thing was, we're going to write the word Omaha, the town Omaha, everywhere in our facility. We want to create an Omaha state of mind. That's where we want to end the season, so we're going to practice with that, every single day at the forefront of our thoughts here. And to his credit, it's worked out. He knows his baseball. Like I said, he's found some creative ways to recruit guys. What I find interesting on this team is while you do have some all-stars like Kalen Culpepper and a really good closer in Tyson Neighbors, 2 of their other better players are former Division III guys. Their Friday starter, Owen Barema, I hope I'm saying that right. They got him from D3 school from St. Paul, Minnesota. You wouldn't really think to go look there, for a guy like that in the transfer portal, but he's come in and been really good for him. The guy who closed out their game against SEMO to move on to this round, J.J. Slack, did a backflip after he finished it off. Really athletic guy, but he came from D3 Southwestern in Georgetown, Texas. He wasn't, baseball wasn't even his primary sport. He was playing D-back for their football team. So, I mean, to go out and find these random guys who weren't even in Division I, who are now stepping up and making big contributions for Kansas State, very impressive, and it shows he had a vision for this team, and it's starting to work out.
You mentioned Kalen Culpepper, shortstop. He's an intriguing guy and has an opportunity really to be a pretty high draft pick for the Wildcats. I've seen some first-round projections for him. Really interesting recruit out of, I think, Memphis is where he came from. He was a guy that somehow Kansas State got on when, in fact, this to me is almost like a K-State recruiting story that you hear about in other sports. Little undersized, but showed great athleticism. Kansas State got on him early, and when he started to fill out a little bit and his stock was rising, Kansas State already had done the work, had done the legwork on him, and he decided to, commit and sign with Kansas State, and he just has been outstanding. He was the MVP, I guess, of that Fayetteville Regional, and he did I see he hit for the cycle in one of the games?
He did. So his regional performance went like this, and after I say it, it's pretty easy to understand why he won MVP. He hit for the cycle against Louisiana Tech, which he might be the first player ever to do that in an NCAA tournament game that started on one day and ended in another,
right.
Which is quite something. Yeah, hit for the cycle there, bam, great start. It's a 3-run blast against Arkansas to basically win the game. They win by 1, and they don't do it without that. And then against SEMO, he gets 2 singles, which, ho-hum, only 2 singles. But they also intentionally walked him at least once. He just came to the plate, and the team said, why even bother with this? You go to first, we'll pitch to the next guy. I mean, that's some respect right there. So he's really good, and he's swinging the bat great right now. Great story. It's interesting. I'm looking forward to talking to him about this week. Memphis really is not, a typical recruiting ground for Kansas State, at least especially in basketball and football. You do not see guys from Tennessee coming over here, but they really identified him, and it's worked out.
For sure. He'll be one to follow this weekend in Charlottesville. All right, yeah, can't wait to see those games, and like I said, would be outstanding if Kansas State found its way to Omaha. It'd be the first Kansas team from the state of Kansas, I believe, since the 1990s to go. I can't remember the last year Wichita State was in Omaha. They won it in 1989, and I think they got back in subsequent years. And then KU went to the College World Series in 1993, went 2-0 there in their only College World Series appearance. So it's been a long time since a school from Kansas reached the College World Series. Okay, hey, Kellis, let's switch sports and talk a little football. I think the next time I see you will be at Big 12 Football Media Days in about, a little over a month from now in, of all places, Las Vegas. That's not exactly in the conference footprint, but it's not too far away now from the college footprint with schools in Arizona, Utah, and Colorado in the league. You know, a lot of the way too early preseason polls for college football really like K-State. I've seen K-State anywhere from first to third, and no lower than third in the preseason projections. What do you think they've got it right? I know it's hard to evaluate, especially when we're trying to compare them with schools that we're not very familiar with all the newcomers this year.
Right. Well, I think, if you expand it to, is Kansas State a top 3 team in the Big 12 per expectations? Yes, I think absolutely. That might sound weird when you're losing as much as they lost, like Beebe, Will Howard, some other guys in the offensive line. They're not bringing back the typical roster that you would say, well, this is a loaded, really experienced group, should win the Big 12. But they've got a quarterback who started one game, and people are extremely high on, and Avery Johnson, who everybody around here, thinks is going to be better than Will Howard ever was. And that's no knock on Howard. He was a great quarterback, won a Big 12 for him. But Johnson has just been that good in the limited time he's played. And people are really excited to see him get out there and start this season. Then you add on what they're returning with DJ Giddens, a running back. Then you bring in Dylan Edwards as a new transfer at the same position. It's just kind of scary to think about how hard it's going to be to stop Kansas State from rushing the ball next season. I mean, those are 3 pretty good weapons in the backfield. And then on top of that, they've got some good receivers and a guy who can get the ball to him. So offense really shouldn't be a problem. There are some question marks on defense. How that compares exactly to other teams, I'm not sure. I don't know that I'd go out and say, they're the odds-on favorite here, but to lump them with Utah, lump them with Kansas. I'm not sure why Oklahoma State's not getting any love, but to lump them with Oklahoma State, I think that's very fair. And definitely, this team is entering the season with conference championship expectations. They want to be in that mix. They were kind of in it last year, fell a little short. Losing that game to Iowa State at the end of the season kind of made it look like they weren't ever in it, but they were there. I mean, fans around here had some legitimate gripes when the Big 12 issued a correction on their tiebreaker rules late in the season.
That's right.
Hopefully, we don't resort to that now with more teams in the mix here. But yeah, there's plenty of optimism for football. There are guys who actually just got back on campus or doing some summer workouts right now. So, yeah, I mean, you never know how things are going to go work out this far ahead of time, and they've got a challenging schedule just like anybody else in the league, but they're definitely at the top, I think.
Yeah, that schedule includes an interesting non-conference game against Arizona early. How did that one end up being a non-conference game?
Yeah, so interesting story. Many years ago, they scheduled these things so far in advance that might have been 7-8 years ago now. They agreed to play Arizona this year at home and next year in Tucson. And then, a few months ago, Arizona decides to join the conference. Well, what do we do with this game all of a sudden? In a perfect world, both teams would go out and find some new teams to play. They wouldn't have to keep that series on the books as a non-conference game, but that proved to just be a little bit too difficult. Maybe it could have happened, but I don't think either team really wanted to go through the work of doing it. Kansas State suggested the idea, why don't we just keep this on here like North Carolina and Wake Forest have done in the past. We'll just play it like it's a regular game that doesn't count in the league standings. They said, fine, that sounds good to us. So, yeah, they're keeping the game on the schedule. It's just not going to count in the Big 12 standings. It's interesting because Arizona is another team that has Big 12 aspirations this year, and we could see, conceivably, a Big 12 championship preview in a game that does not even count in the conference standings this year in Manhattan. So that'll be interesting. And one quick tidbit here while we're talking about future schedules, they also had Colorado coming up So 24 and 25, they play Arizona. They were supposed to play Colorado in 26 and 27, same kind of deal. They decided they had enough time to wipe that off the schedule and schedule somebody new. So that series will not be taking place. And for some odd reason, down the line, they also scrubbed a series with Rutgers. That's no longer happening. They replaced them with Oregon State. I don't know all the details of that one, but conference realignment hit, and some of the football schedules had to be adjusted.
Well, Oregon State, the team without a Power 5 conference affiliation, would certainly appreciate that opportunity, I got to think, more than Rutgers would playing Kansas State. The early season over-under totals for Kansas State at 9.5, same as Utah. So in one of the markets that I have seen, those you would call them the co-favorites. Arizona at 8.5, University of Kansas at 8.5, over-under win total, victory total for the year. So I'm with you on Oklahoma State. I think they're being a little undersold right now. I'd keep an eye on the Cowboys as well. It'll be interesting to talk to Mike Gundy in Las Vegas next month.
I think I saw their over-unders just 7.5 for a team that was in the Big 12 championship game last year. I don't see why that's so low. They bring back Ollie Gordon. I know people are low on Alan Bowman, but he led them to a bunch of wins last season. There's no reason why he can't do it again when he's older. I think people are sleeping on them. I certainly see why Utah and Kansas State are, seemingly ranked ahead of them. They've got higher ceilings, but Oklahoma State, I've seen them as low as like 7 or 8 in some projections. That's just loony bin to me. That Gundy's not going to let that happen.
The other thing that's out there for our college football teams is an expanded playoff. Kansas State has never played for the national championship, but if they have a season like they did a couple years ago where they beat TCU in the conference championship game, and if you go back into their history, you can find other examples of when they were pretty well regarded at the end of the year. They could be one of the 12 teams in the college football playoff and technically be playing for a national championship. So I think that's that'll certainly be something we'll all keep our eyes out on and be a conversation driver for programs like this. I think we all believe that the SEC and to maybe a lesser extent the Big Ten will have more teams in the college football playoff 12-team bracket than the Big 12, but I see the Big 12 getting multiple teams. It's champion and maybe its second best team in the field, and no reason to think Kansas State can't be one of those teams.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun to think about because for so long this conference has been dominated by Texas and Oklahoma. Now that they're gone and they expand the college football playoff, that's going to open the door for a lot of teams to have these opportunities they didn't have before. So Kansas State definitely, they're starting to think, maybe we can step up and be a new a new kingpin in this conference and make the college football playoff every once in a while. And you know what? I think Kansas can think the same way. They haven't had the recent history, but they got to go into this season thinking they can get there too. And I think that's great because I don't know that there's been really too many seasons ever before where you could think even one of the two schools were going to, had a realistic shot at getting to a playoff. And now it's both, it's theoretically possible for both teams. And if there is one plus side to losing some great schools like Texas and Oklahoma for the Big 12, it's that these teams who haven't been there before all of a sudden have some new dreams in their sights.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, Kellis, I know it's been a while since we talked, so I'll bring this up and want to get your thoughts on it, and that is kind of the sea change in college athletics when it comes to paying players. Not only are those in school now and going forward going to be able to take advantage of revenue sharing, money that the conference receives from media contracts and bowl games, ticket sales, they're going to share in that. But athletes that played college sports from 2016 on will be part of a almost $2.8 billion settlement in $2.8 billion in damages as a settlement. They'll be able to collect that for having as part of a settlement that that the college sports, that the NCAA reached in the House versus NCAA decision just a couple of weeks ago. But I'm more interested in going forward here and athletes being able to share in the revenue, and it's like the whole model has been reshaped now. And I remember asking you this a couple of years ago when NIL started having an impact, and we talked about how Kansas State is the type of program that no matter what the change that is going to occur, they're going to be, I'm not going to say front and center, but they're not going to be left behind. Kansas State will do what it takes to be competitive and to not have an issue like this be used against them in recruiting. Now, I have no doubt that Big 12 schools all feel fortunate to be in one of the Power 4 conferences, but their money's not going to be, the Big 12 and the ACC money's not going to be what it will be in the SEC and the Big 10. I'm hearing that almost $20 million schools are going to have go toward the athletes and paying the athletes. But $20 million at Kansas State or Kansas or Iowa State or Oklahoma State is a little different than $20 million at Texas, Alabama, Florida, Ohio State, Michigan. There's a lot more money left in the athletic department after that $20 million is spent on athletes. So what I'd like to hear from you about is, do you see the gap between the SEC and the Big Ten widening financially over the next few years? And could that have an impact on the type of athlete that Kansas State or Big 12 schools recruit? And could it create even a larger imbalance in college at the highest level of college sports?
Yeah, it's a great question. Depending on how this whole revenue sharing thing shakes out, it certainly could. But if it shakes out another way, maybe it won't have as big of an impact as we think. I know from people I've talked to around the Big 12, the big question on everybody's mind lately is, not even how are we going to keep up with the SEC or Big 10 in terms of this, but how are we going to just come up with an extra $20 million, that hasn't been in our budget for decades, centuries, whatever. To just magically add this to the budget is going to be quite a conundrum. But I will say, though, that I think we've already kind of seen a shift away from the way donors and athletic directors traditionally spent their money. You're already seeing, things like facilities aren't really as important as they once were. You're not seeing a whole big push to build the most lavish locker room anymore. People would rather just go ahead and give that money to the players and let them enjoy it that way rather than have a barbershop in their locker room and stuff like that. So I think really the teams in the Big 12 and otherwise that'll prosper the most in this new environment will be the teams that figure out the best ways to use the money that they have. And I think Kansas State has proven that they're pretty good at this. And I think that they'll stop emphasizing things that are no longer necessary, and they'll probably start emphasizing the things that matter to recruits and the coaches and everything else. So I think it'll be a learning experience for everybody, but definitely the teams that shift most with the tides and adapt the quickest will, survive and win. And the one, just kind of like when the transfer portal just started up, the teams that embraced it the most had success. The teams that were slow to come around to it kind of looked silly for it. So I think we'll end up kind of going through the same process. But I've also heard that, some leagues will be, some teams in some leagues will be handing out $20 million. Some teams in some leagues will be handing out 10 or less. If that's the case, then definitely there will be a divide there, and that could make for a competitive imbalance in some ways.
Well, my hope is that the money that now has to be earmarked to go to the athletes doesn't cost schools sports, non-revenue sports, and that budget decisions like that would have to be made. I do think we might see, especially at the Big 12 and ACC level, some trimming of jobs in athletic departments that looking, as schools look for ways to to just be smarter in their athletic budgets, that maybe they can consolidate positions and save some money there. One example of it that we might have already seen to ward off is not in the Big 12, but at Texas A&M, where new athletic director Trev Alberts came in and laid off a bunch of athletic department staff in order to save money and help defray the expense of the Jimbo Fisher $80 million buyout. So a lot of interesting decisions down the pike for college sports. And again, I really, when it comes to the schools that we cover in this part of the country, and Kansas and Kansas State are among them, I just kind of have faith that they'll find a way to get it done and be competitive, continue to be competitive. And Kellis, I like what you said earlier, and it's absolutely true that there haven't been many football seasons around here where we go in thinking, man, Kansas State and Kansas, potential preseason top 25, potential conference champions. How about if they play once in Manhattan and once in Arlington later in the year for the Big 12 championship? That would be phenomenal. But hey, look, Kellis, always great catching up with you. Like yourself, I'll be watching with a lot of interest the Kansas State-Virginia Super Regional this weekend, and who knows, maybe next week we'll be meeting up in Omaha, Nebraska.
I've never covered the College World Series. I would love to record a podcast from that press box, so let's cross our fingers and hope it happens.
Good deal. Thanks, Kellis. That'll do it for this episode. Thanks to producer Randy Mason for putting together the show, and to our SportsBeat KC staff of Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. Tip of the baseball cap to Kellis Robinett for sharing his insights. Thanks for listening. Let us know what you thought of the show and of SportsBeat KC by leaving a rating and review. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in and around Kansas City.